If you live in Canada, you probably come across a book by Frank Anderson. He was the author of a number of cheap paperbacks, published by Frontier Books and later by Gopher Books, focusing on true crime and the history of Western Canada. Anderson's titles included Sagas of the Canadian West, Regina's Terrible Tornado, and The Dark Strangler, which is a book about serial killer Earl Nelson. Anderson's most famous book was Hanging in Canada, a concise history of capital punishment in Canada. For some reason, he seemed to be really interested in hanging, and also wrote A Dance with Death, Canadian Women on the Gallows. I've made extensive use of some of his works in writing the scripts for this channel. Anderson's books were ubiquitous and found in libraries across the country. They were even for sale at the RCMP Museum in Regina during the 1990s. They were cheap, but not badly written and contained lots of interesting information, especially about the history of Western Canada. This Frank Anderson seemed to really know his stuff, whoever he was. To be honest, I never gave him much thought. But, as the late Paul Harvey used to say, here is the rest of the story. In the 1930s, in the Depression, Frank Anderson was a wild boy of the road. He was said to have no parents and in 1936 was serving a 1-year sentence at the Moosomin, Saskatchewan jail for 16 to 21-year-olds. His crime? Stealing a bicycle and 2 jars of bubble gum from a railway boxcar. Frank and a buddy decided to escape. The plan was to knock out a pair of jail guards with a large wooden homemade potato masher. But during the escape attempt on August 2, 1936, Frank hit guard John Sangster, who had a metal plate in his head, too hard. Too hard. And Sangster died. And Frank found himself charged, then tried, then convicted of murder, and sentenced to hang at the Regina jail. Frank was just 16 years old, and at the time was the youngest person ever sentenced to death in Canada. But Frank did not hang, for due to the public outcry over hanging a mere boy, his sentence was commuted to life imprisonment. Frank was to serve 15 years, during which time he earned his high school diploma and became the first inmate in Canadian history to take university courses behind bars. Upon his release, he earned both a bachelor's and a master's degree in social work and joined the John Howard Society. Frank would marry and become the father of 2 children, and in 1974 was appointed to the National Parole Board by Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau. And somehow, he also found time to write and publish dozens of books. Frank passed away in 2008. Thus, Frank was spared from the gallows and became a good and useful citizen. I find I have mixed feelings about capital punishment. While I would like to see monsters like Clifford Olson and Paul Bernardo suffer the extreme penalty, I wonder if some of those executed might have become productive citizens, like Frank Anderson, if their lives had been spared. Would Stanley Illebrun, whose case was just covered on this channel, have turned his life around for the better? Can people atone for past sins? Even murder? Should society forgive and give second chances? It is now Christmas, a holiday named in honor of one who was himself the victim of capital punishment. In the spirit of the season, shall we not, each of us, atone for our past misdeeds, forgive those who have harmed us, and ask those we have hurt to forgive us? Shall we not contrive to become better people? Shall we not? If you enjoyed today's video, please drop a like, comment, and consider subscribing to The Gallows, where we explore Canadian murder cases which ended on the scaffold. And remember, if you're born to hang, you'll never be shot. Merry Christmas.